Nader Hashem, associate professor at University of Denver, joins us now from Denver. Thanks so much for joining us, Nader, here at TRT World, as always. Obviously, we see in this report the conflict is getting deadlier for children. Why do you think this is the case? Why is this happening?
Well, it's happening for the reasons that explain why this conflict is considered the worst, the worst humanitarian crisis in the world. I mean, the primary reason is because of the Saudi blockade on Yemen and the Saudi bombing campaign. They're responsible for the vast majority of the atrocities. The Houthis are not innocent as well, but I mean, the activities of the main parties, primarily the U.S.-backed Saudi coalition, is to blame for the humanitarian suffering that we're seeing in Yemen today.
And Saudi administration offered a new nationwide ceasefire. The Houthis said there is nothing new in it. How do you see this situation unfolding? Is there an end in sight to this crisis?
Well, the Saudi peace proposal that was just offered this week is nothing really new. It's very much a repackaging of an old peace proposal. The devil is really in the details. We could talk about the details of this proposal. I think the biggest difference now between this version of the Saudi peace plan as opposed to the previous version of the Saudi peace plan is that there's a new sheriff in town in Washington, D.C., and his name is Joe Biden. And Biden has been publicly on record that he wants to put an end to this war and stop U.S. support for Saudi offensive activity in Yemen. And so I think what's happening here is the Saudi regime, the notorious Saudi crown prince, Mohammed bin Salman, who is the defense minister and is largely responsible for this situation in Yemen, wants to show that he's an ally that the United States can trust. And so I think this is a first attempt to show that that Saudi Arabia is interested in resolving this issue and to put the focus on the Houthis, make them respond to the Saudi proposal and to give concessions. So I think the best interpretation that one can put on the Saudi peace proposal is at least the question of diplomacy and peace is back on the agenda. But I think it's going to take a lot more serious diplomacy by the international community to put an end to this catastrophe in Yemen.
All right, let's see what happens with the Joe Biden at the helm and in the White House. But let's go back to children and this report. The fact is that generation of children is growing up knowing only conflict. Even if the crisis ends soon, the consequences will be severe for generations ahead.
Well, yes, and your comment right now is, especially multiplied. I mean, the tragedy of Yemen and what's happening to children and future generations is multiplied in the context of Yemen, because Yemen is one of the poorest parts of the Arab world. I mean, prior to this war, which is now into its 7th year, Yemen was the most broken, devastated, poverty-stricken part of the Arab world. Now we've had 7 years of war. According to the UN, roughly 250,000 people have been killed. The recent report by Save the Children is saying, 1/4 of them are children. And so, what's the future for these children? I think what we need to remember here is not only does the war need to end as soon as possible, but there needs to be a serious plan for the reconstruction and rebuilding of Yemen. If that's not part of this peace process, then I think the children that we're talking about will really have no serious future that we can recognize.
Nader Hashemi, I appreciate that insight for us here at TRT World. He's the associate professor at University of Denver.